Hi guys, we did increasing physical activity in young adults with autism spectrum disorder.
Hi, my name is Amy Omsberg. I'm a lead RBT in College Station, Texas for a ranch home therapy clinic setting for children with autism under the age of 8. I am in my second summer session with Ball State and will hopefully finish in December.
Hi guys, my name is Charlene Fotheringham. I have been working as an RBT for now a year and a half. This is my second semester at Ball State University. I will be graduating in May 2020.
Hi, my name is Natalie Kemp. I am in Madison, Wisconsin. I've been an RBT for 3 years, and I am in my third semester at Ball State.
I'm Savannah Mickle. I'm an RBT in Nashville. I just started this past February, and I have been in the program for 2 semesters.
Amy, we can't hear you.
All right, sorry.
There we go.
The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services actually recommends that as adults we engage in moderate physical activity for about 150 minutes per week, and if it is higher intensity, 75 minutes per week. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention recently conducted a study in June 2018 by Blackwell and Clark, and they found that actually only 22.9% of adults aged 18 to 64 engaged in this recommended level of physical activity. The time of life in which physical activity is highest for the average person is usually in childhood, and it's shown that as with age that will start to decrease. Casperson, Pereira, and Corain in 2000 made a point that the decline of physical activity is correlated with the rise in obesity and risk of cardiovascular disease that we see. CVD in adults may actually be linked all the way back to childhood physical activity. It is shown, however, that engaging in these higher rates of physical activity can decrease these mortality rates in both men and women, and this was stated by Anderson, Schnorr, Schroll, and Olheim. Interventions that have been shown to be effective include informational approaches, for example, point of decision prompts. This can include an informational sign that encourages an individual to take the stairs rather than an elevator. The study was conducted by Anderson, Francois, Snyder, Bartlett, and Fontaine in 1998. As you know, many people are aware of the devices such as Fitbit and Apple Watch. These devices are another popular intervention that creates and promotes awareness of an individual's own daily activity. The use of these pedometers a study was conducted by Chan, Ryan, and Tudor Locke in 2014 and showed that just by using a pedometer, it was effective in decreasing the participant's weight without the use of a food intervention. Another popular intervention used to target physical activity are social media campaigns. The VERB campaign was conducted by the CDC to increase physical activity in youth aged 9 to 13. What their goal and target was to motivate them to engage with physical activities that were as equally reinforcing to the individual as current sedentary activities, like watching TV. So they encouraged them to participate in after-school activities with their friends, that allowed them to be with their peers while still engaging in physical activity. Goal setting and reinforcement, which is the focus of this presentation, is another intervention that combines an individual making a specific goal and implementing reinforcement when the goal is met. GSR has been used to change dietary habits as conducted by a study by Schnoll and Zimmerman in 2001. the study demonstrated that 91% of the participants increased their fiber intake, and it scored 15% higher on the self-efficacy rating. Goal setting and reinforcement, as recommended by Todd, is most effective when the goals are specific, realistic, and proximal. He also says that when an individual sets these realistic goals that they are likely to meet, upon achieving it, it motivates them to meet the next goal. And as they continue to increase and meet their goals, they begin to enjoy the process of participating in the activity. In the article, Increasing Physical Activity Levels in Young Adults with Autism Spectrum Disorder, as conducted by Lalonde, they found that Lalonde, McNeil, Eversole, Ragosi, and Poling in 2014. They conducted a study because many studies had used GSR to target physical activity, but they had yet to see it being used to target the population of young adults with ASD. So they used a multiple baseline across participants with the addition of a reversal element. Their aim was to establish that functional relationship between goal setting and reinforcement and the increase of physical activity. The results of the study showed that all the participants met the recommended goal of reaching 10,000 steps daily and even exceeded that. The purpose of our study is to determine if goal setting and reinforcement is an effective intervention to increase physical activity throughout by tracking daily activity steps across these participants in the different settings.
The methods of our replication study included 4 participants, including Amy, age 25, Savannah, age 25, Charlene, age 25, and Natalie, age 24. Prior to the study, we were all able to walk independently and had 0 health concerns. This study took place in our natural environments as we all live in different states. We do, however, all live in the Central Standard Time Zone. All 4 of us worked as a registered behavior technician throughout this study and were moderately active throughout the workday. The dependent variable being measured in the study was the frequency of total daily steps taken. For the purpose of the study, we defined a step as any instance of one's foot coming into contact with the ground, which simultaneously recorded a step on the activity tracker. Examples included walking, running, jumping jacks, and jumping. Non-examples include sitting in a chair while stomping your feet on the floor and standing or sitting in a stationary position while shaking your arms to induce a step on the activity tracker. The materials required to measure this dependent variable included the Tuber activity tracker that we all purchased at the beginning of this study. The activity tracker was used to measure frequency data on our daily steps. We also used our iPhones to take IOA data of our steps and set alarms as reminders to put on and take off our activity tracker every day. The iPhone also allowed us to access the VeryFit Pro application, which synced directly to the activity tracker and allowed us to visually analyze the data. Access to Google Drive for data storage and Google Hangouts for group communication was also utilized. A multiple baseline across participants with a reversal design was used to determine if goal setting combined with tangible reinforcers was an effective intervention to increase physical activity in regards to number of steps taken per day. The method of data collection used was frequency recording. Just as in the Lalonde study, our replication project consisted of 4 phases: baseline, treatment, return to baseline, and return to intervention. During the initial baseline phase, we put on our activity trackers on our left wrist at 7 a.m. in the morning. In this stage, the activity trackers had black tape over the front of the screen to block viewing the daily steps. We communicated through Google Hangouts that the activity tracker had been put on, and at 9 p.m., each participant recorded their frequency into Google Drive and communicated through Google Hangouts that their activity tracker was removed. The participants uploaded a picture of their activity tracker results from the day to the Google Doc accessed in Google Drive. This verified that the activity tracker was inactive for the rest of the day and confirmed that the data was collected from the hours of 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Once the data baseline consisted of each participant wearing their activity tracker until a stabilized baseline trend of a minimum of 5 days had been established. Then we entered into the treatment phase of goal setting and reinforcement. This treatment phase was implemented immediately following baseline. The treatment consisted of reinforcement and goal setting. Each morning, a step goal was set for the day. The initial step goal was taken from the average number of steps taken in baseline and increased by 10%. Target goals increased each time a participant met their goal for 2 consecutive days. Target goals increased by 10% until participants reached 10,000 steps for 3 consecutive days. If any goal was unmet after 4 days, then the step goal would drop 10% so the participant can contact reinforcement. When participants reached 10,000 steps for a day for 3 consecutive days, then the intervention was withdrawn. Return to baseline was identical to the initial baseline phase with the exception that no tape was placed over the activity tracker. Return to baseline phase did not include reinforcement or goal setting. Participants had access to frequency of steps they had taken but were not reinforced for their total steps. When steps were stable or on a decreasing trend, the next phase was implemented. The next and final phase was the return to treatment phase. This was identical to the original treatment phase with the exception of the daily step goal. The step goal now was taken from the return to baseline phase and increased by 10%. Reinforcement was introduced and available.
In terms of IOA data, we use total count inter-observer agreement, which uses the formula of smaller count over larger count times 100. Each participant was required to upload a photo of their step count to the shared Google Drive folder every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday. IOA data was collected to allow participants to check for validity in others' step counts. In addition, all data was shared to a Google Sheet, allowing each participant to see each other's data and photos. IOA percentage was at 93% due to errors that were made by participants. This happened because 5 instances occurred where participants did not remember to take a photo of their daily step count, thus not allowing for the data to be verified. Treatment fidelity was monitored and implemented using a checklist consisting of a number of questions that each participant was required to implement and monitor. Each participant was asked to evaluate each morning if their phone was set to an alarm that went off at 6:55 a.m. to put on the tracker and set to 8:55 p.m. to take off the tracker. Alarms were set to 5 minutes before the required time that the tracker should be on or off the wrist. Participants were then required to assess if these actions were completed at the correct time and send a confirmation to a shared Google Hangout. This was required for both on and off updates each day. On the days IOA data was collected, each participant uploaded the photo of their total step count to the shared Google Drive. Treatment integrity was at 100% for Amy, Savannah, Charlene, and Natalie throughout the duration of the study. Each day, personal evaluations were taken on a treatment fidelity checklist, identical to the one that you see on the slide below.
So this is our of everyone's, and everyone's just going to take a minute to go through and talk about their own personal data.
Okay, so as you can see on my graph, I had a baseline average of initial baseline of 4,536. This ranged from 1,533 all the way to 7,442. Upon the treatment phase condition, you saw an immediate rise in the daily step count. The average for that phase was 7,546 with a range of 2,741 all the way up to 13,030. You can see that there is variability in this data, but by the end of the condition phase, there is at least 3 consistent trend points of over 10,000 steps. In the return to baseline, the trend immediately drops. The average for that phase was 7,252 with a range of 6,774 to 7,994. I believe to take into consideration the reason that this baseline is higher than the initial is that due to maturation, as I had already been consistently increasing my steps. And then they returned to goal setting and reinforcement. The average in the final condition was 7,348. The range was 2,170 to 10,689.
Okay, my graph is the second one from the top. As you can see, my data had a lot of variability as well. In the initial baseline stage, I had a range of about 6,000 steps to 14,000 steps with an average of 9,507 daily steps. When treatment was implemented, my steps slowly increased, and after 11 days, I mastered my step goal of 10,527. When goal setting and reinforcement was withdrawn, my graph shows a decreasing trend. Once goal setting and reinforcement was implemented again in the return to treatment phase, my steps increased as well.
So my graph, my baseline, I had an average step count of 5,796, and then I entered into treatment. I do have a couple of drops in there. One of them I was sick. Another day we had a snow day, so I didn't really do much that day, as you can see. But the last 3 data points, I hit the goal of 10,000, and then I was able to return to baseline. My return to baseline had a higher average than the original baseline did. And then I entered into treatment again, and overall, my steps didn't increase that much, but they did a little bit.
My graph is the very bottom one. I was the last one to go into treatment. I was in baseline the longest simply because I had pretty variable data also. I waited until I had kind of a considerably low number that was pretty reliable for those last 3 to 4 points before I went into intervention. And then I skyrocketed up. So my baseline range at first was, or my baseline average was 6,620. And then I went into treatment and immediately it became 10,691. Again, I think this was because I was finally receiving reinforcement. Then I went back to baseline again into withdrawal, and my average became 6,725, so still a bit up from my original baseline, but still pretty variable and low. So once there was some trend detectable in that baseline, I went back up into intervention. And as you can see, my average then was 10,390, and definitely more stable and ending with an upwards trend, which I was definitely happy about. And yeah, showed a good functional relationship for me.
So our conclusion, there was a lot of variability, not only across all of ours compared to each other, but within our own personal performance. There was also quite a bit of variability. We did each increase our average step count from the initial baseline, and we all did reach 10,000 steps, which was the start goal for each participant to reach at least 10,000 steps when intervention was implemented. And compared to the replication study, our visual analysis of our data portrayed a lot more variability. 2 out of the 4 participants averaged above 10,000 steps, while the remaining 2 exhibited averages that were slightly higher than the second baseline condition. But overall, we found that the treatment of goal setting and reinforcement proved to be effective, which also replicates the results obtained in previous studies.
There were definitely a few limitations that we came across in this replication study. One limitation was the activity tracker malfunction for multiple participants, and it just did not record steps taken or the frequency count was reset during the day. In addition, we also learned throughout the study that the tracker would not log steps unless 20 or more steps were taken at one time. There were limiting circumstances for most of the participants. For example, cold weather prohibited some participants from going outdoors for the recreation time, or some of our group members were sick, so they didn't exercise on those days. Those events correlated directly to the days of inactivity that created variability in the data trend. Also, replication should be implemented in a broader spectrum of participants, as with this replication study, each participant is female, aged 24 to 25, Caucasian, and of similar socioeconomic status. All of our references are at the end. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we are super excited to hear your feedback.